Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking closely at a hidden front line in the global financial system. When most of us think of banking security, our minds naturally drift to the movie version, right? Massive steel vaults, complex encrypted passwords, armed guards at the door. But the true front line, the one that actually protects the integrity of the global economy, is so much more human and honestly significantly more complex. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the hidden financial frontline, then define what a PEP actually is, look beyond the politician, examine the risk of corruption, and finally, wrap up with how we manage that PEP risk. Section 1. The hidden financial frontline. Uncovering systemic financial vulnerabilities. So I want you to imagine opening a bank account. And just ask yourself, who is a bank's absolute riskiest customer? Think about it for a second. If you were sitting in a compliance office, reviewing a massive stack of applications, whose profile would make you pause and immediately call your manager? Is it some mysterious offshore shell company? An anonymous crypto entrepreneur? Well, surprisingly, the answer isn't always some shadowy figure operating in the dark. Actually, it's often the very individuals in the highest positions of public trust, the people making the rules. I know, that might sound completely backward at first glance. Aren't lawmakers supposed to be the safest, most reliable bets in society? Well, as we'll see today, immense power brings a very specific, structural type of vulnerability to any financial institution. Moving right along to Section 2, defining the PEP, the exact profile of a high-risk client. What's absolutely fascinating here is how the financial sector strips away all the politics to define this purely as a risk category. A politically exposed person, or a PEP, is an individual who is or has been entrusted with a prominent public function, which makes them susceptible to bribery or corruption. Crucially, a PEP isn't necessarily a criminal. In fact, the vast majority are completely upstanding public servants. But the banking system has to assume that where there's access to massive state funds, lucrative national contracts, or sweeping regulatory decisions, well, there's an equally massive temptation for illicit activity. Now, this distinction right here is absolutely vital for financial institutions. The difference between monitoring a local official versus an official from a foreign government. A domestic PEP holds a public function within the bank's home country. The bank generally understands the local political landscape, the legal frameworks, what the normal salary bands look like. But a foreign PEP, that introduces a completely different universe of risk. We're talking complex geopolitical dynamics, totally different international laws, and sometimes incredibly opaque sources of wealth coming from jurisdictions that just might not prioritize financial transparency. Which brings us to Section 3, Beyond the Politician, Mapping the Extended Network. And that risk profile? It extends outward in concentric circles. Because let's be real, corrupt funds are rarely held in a politician's own name. They get funneled through relatives and close associates, or what the industry calls RCAs. Just think about the pure logistics of corruption for a second. If an official takes a multi-million-dollar bribe, they're certainly not going to deposit it directly into their personal checking account. That would trigger immediate alarms. Instead, those illicit funds are carefully layered and moved through the people closest to them. So the compliance net they have to cast to prevent this money from slipping through the cracks is just incredibly wide. We are talking about spouses and partners, immediate family members, business partners, and close financial advisors. It's a fascinating, if honestly somewhat exhausting reality for financial investigators. I mean, even an obscure business partner from some joint real estate venture a decade ago can get flagged. It really highlights a crucial takeaway for us. Securing the financial system requires mapping out these incredibly complex webs of human relationships just as diligently as tracking the actual dollars. Section 4. The risk of corruption. Let's look at why this monitoring actually matters. So, why is identifying these individuals so absolutely critical to global stability? This quote really nails it for us. The reality of global finance is that without identifying PEPs, systems are critically vulnerable to the proceeds of bribery and large-scale money laundering. We aren't just talking about a few misplaced dollars here. We are talking about the potential for complete systemic financial destabilization. When state coffers are literally looted and that money is easily washed through global banks, it strips essential resources away from everyday citizens and directly impacts the economic health of entire nations. This threat matrix perfectly lays out the stark contrast in risk levels, and it shows exactly why standard checks just aren't enough here. On one side, you have standard customer risk. This is your low money laundering risk, usually verified by a simple W-2 or regular payroll deposits. Easy, right? But on the other side, you've got PEP customer risk. This comes with a super high potential for bribery and incredibly complex wealth sources. A standard background check just looks at a salary. A PEP background check, it has to untangle shell companies, analyze foreign investments, and review massive state-sponsored contracts. It's a whole different ballgame. All right, final section. Section 5, managing the PEP risk, the compliance solution. So how do banks actually fight this? The financial sector's systematic approach to mitigating this threat is called enhanced due diligence, or EDD. Step 1 is simply identifying the PEP or their relative and close associate. Step 2 requires establishing the exact source of wealth and funds. And it's not enough to just know where the money for today's deposit came from. The bank literally has to understand how this person accumulated their total net worth over their entire lifetime. Finally, step 3, implement ongoing, rigorous transaction monitoring. You can't just check a PEP once at the door. You have to watch every single financial movement they make while inside the institution. And what is the target for all this oversight? 100%. That is the theoretical goal of continuous compliance monitoring required for flagged PEP accounts. It requires constant, unyielding vigilance. Why? Because a single slip transaction can mean millions in laundered funds crossing borders in a matter of seconds. Now, hitting 100% accuracy is incredibly difficult given the sheer volume of global financial traffic, but it is the absolute standard that compliance teams must relentlessly strive for every single day. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a really provocative thought about this ongoing battle against global financial corruption. Knowing just how incredibly complex these networks are, how much hidden wealth do you think is moving through the global financial system right now? It is a staggering question to consider. Every single time money moves across the globe, there is this entire hidden architecture of compliance officers and algorithms trying desperately to ensure that power isn't being abused. Thank you so much for joining me to uncover this crucial piece of the puzzle. Keep questioning the systems working behind the scenes and stay curious.